part. It is the first part of the parable, the hard ground. The other two forms of soil really are other forms, quite distinct forms, of the same legal thing. So by spending more time on this, I want you to be aware of the fact that the great battle, I think, that will face the young church in this emerging millennium is the battle between legal and gospel. There's a lot of thought gone in behind that statement, but I think the church is going to face legal, many of you are quite, though you're not all Gen Xers, you're still quite Gen X in your approach to things. You're very digital in what you do. And the danger of a digital approach to things, though it is the way God wants us to be, the danger of a digital approach is that if you become quite prophetic, but you also become depressed easily. Think of the prophets in the Bible. Very high, very low, marvelous things that happen to them, and then wanting to die. And for many young Christians who get saved in this climate, where God requires you to give everything you've got, your great danger will be that if you blow it in any way, you'll want to die. You'll be like Elijah, take my life, I'm not any better than my father's. And it is very, very important that you see strongly the basis of the gospel is a trust and love relationship, not a reward and punishment motive. Remember I said to you yesterday, because somebody asked here, I gave you a description of God's laws, what they are, that I thought would be probably most helpful in this postmodern climate we're in. Do you remember what I said? God's laws are can you remember? A description of reality from an infinite perspective. Say that again. God's laws are descriptions of reality from an infinite perspective. And I made this little point, say it again, description, not motivation. A description, not motivation. They're not designed to motivate you. They're designed to explain to you, to clarify for you, to describe for you the truth of the thing. But when you use the law as your motivation, you betray its purpose. It is not designed to make you want to do it. It just tells you what it is. Gravity has no motivation, you understand? You may be motivated not to jump off a cliff because you know gravity will operate, but you can't live your life being motivated by gravity. And the threat or bribe side, the fear or the hope side of the thing is not supposed to be your motivation. It is simply a sanction. When you have a punishment or a reward attached to a precept, it makes it a command, not a suggestion. And the 10 Commandments are not called the 10 suggestions. They're not suggestions. They're laws. I like the way Bill Gothard puts things when he teaches biblical principles. He says, these are 8 non-optional principles. Well, what in the fat is a non-optional principle? It's something you have no choice on. It's got to be this way. You can't have any options within that thing. It's not an option to forgive people. It is not an option to stay sexually clean. It is not an option not to lie. It is not an option. It is a command. And the reason it is a command and it has weight is because it is rooted in the reality of things. It's not an invention. God's laws are not inventions. They are descriptions. But they're not motivations. If you keep those 3 things in mind, of reality, the way things actually are, from an infinite perspective. Now, does God ever put a sanction on a thing beside the sanction of what it is? In other words, there's an intrinsic, inbuilt consequence. God does not, I'll put it like this, you are first punished by your sin, not for it. Your sin has its own, you live a life of bitterness. Your body will begin to react. You'll have all kinds of weird things happen to your system. Your relationships will begin to disintegrate. A bitter life actually ends in suicide. That's where it ends. Hurt, and there's a whole chain of events that go through from here to here to here to here, and you wind up, in the end, killing yourself. And there are whole sets of signs. Even sometimes I'd go into a class and I could look and tell how far along kids were towards that end. Matter of fact, what I used to do in high schools, I used one of Bill Gothard's early things, which he called the development of bitterness. And what I used to do is I'd made a simple form of this, and I'd put it up as a chart. I'd just write it up on the board. And I said, I want to talk to you today, and this is like wet lunch times or something, when people have to stay inside and they're all bored, and they often give me just a whole classroom to do stuff. And so I'd said, I want to talk to you today about hurt and how to handle it. And just put a board, hurt and how to handle it. All kinds of kids came in. And then I'd go through this thing, and I'd say, when you get hurt, here's what happens. Here's what happens outwardly. Here's what people can see. It's what your parents can see. Here's what God actually sees going on in your life. And I go all the way down till I hit number 8, where it says, sees no way out, thinks about suicide. And then I ask at the end, this is like a 30-minute session, I'd say, how many of you, if you looked at that, would see yourself somewhere on that chart? And everybody, just look, 80% of the class would stick their hand up. And I'd say, I want you to close your eyes, nobody looking around. How many of you are like right on number 8? You'll be amazed how many kids. I had a kid come up afterwards, he said, what do you do if you're there? I said, see me after school. So I led him to the Lord. He's a Christian social worker now. But see, these things, we spend a lot of time on the legal, but this is the basis of all the departures from the real thing. Here are some of the signs that Finney gave, and he would tell people, this is, if your life is like, they serve God like taking medicine. You got to do it because, it's the way you stay healthy, but you don't like it. The true child of God loves doing what God wants. He delights in it. He enjoys it. When it's love for its own sake, there's no weariness or struggle. His commandments, the Bible says, are not grievous. God's commandments aren't grievous because they're the way things really are. They're not artificial inventions snapped on your life in order to restrict you. They are freedoms, actually. They give you the boundaries in which you can play the game and win. That's basically what it is. Do you enjoy Christianity, or do you serve God basically only for what he can do for you? The man in the religion of fear reads the Bible and he prays because he knows he should. It wouldn't do to say you're a Christian and not read the Bible. They don't enjoy it. Never go to prayer meetings unless it's absolutely necessary. They're cold, dull, listless, and lifeless. They're glad when it's over. Their only enjoyment in religion is one of anticipation. They hope they'll be happy in the next world because they're sure not happy in this one. True child of God's not looking forwards to heaven that he will have peace then. He's got it now. That's why death isn't a big deal to Christians. He's now living in the joy that's there, and when he dies, it'll be just more of the same. I buried my mum a couple of days ago. It wasn't like a big sad thing, everybody crying and weeping, and this is the last time. She went on to meet my dad, who's been there for 2 years and has been missing him a lot. The only ones who miss her now is us, because we don't get to see her again until we join. See the thing? It's not, we didn't call it a funeral. We called it a reunion celebration. Why not? Then they do what they have to, not what they really want to. Moved by convictions, not by affection. Faith is a religion of fear. He regards the law of God for fear God will pass him by if he does not. But he doesn't love to do what God requires in his law. Now, in a postmodern culture, the morals become whatever you think, and you have no real rights and wrongs in that culture. There were 3 different ways of stopping people, or kids in the past, from doing something wrong. One was a knowledge of what was right and wrong. See that? The other one was sort of the cultural consensus. If the people around you thought it was wrong for you to sleep with your boyfriend and get pregnant, let alone the unthinkable have an abortion, see? If the cultural consensus around you was that thing was bad, then you might not do it, not because you knew it was wrong, but because the culture around you would put you down. And the third way that you were stopped from doing something wrong was shame. So to be guilt or being, what would we call cultural consensus against you? Yeah, rejection or being isolated, that's one of those. That girl, we had to put her away, because she got pregnant and she had to drop out of school. That thing. Well, out of those three, there's only one left in this culture. That's not any of the first two. There is no morals left in the culture. Many cultures, many countries, they live amoral lives. Everyone has their own story, and all the stories are true. See that? So Francis Schaeffer used to put it like this. In the old days, if a mother said to her daughter, before she went out on a first date with this boyfriend, if she said to her, be good, the girl might not listen on the date, but at least she knew what she was talking about. You said that today to a modern kid, what the fat are you talking about? See, there's no base anymore there. There's no sense of right and wrong. It doesn't mean that there isn't a right and wrong. There always is a right and a wrong. It's just when the culture doesn't even know about it. This is a culture ignorant of the law of God. It has no clue at all of where things really are. And I think there's developing a hunger for people to tell you what is right. That's why dictatorships come. In a culture where everybody's like doing all their own thing and the whole place is going to the pack, it becomes susceptible to a dictatorship where a person will come and say, you will not do that or you will die, and then everybody starts zig-heiling and stuff. It becomes a scary time when there is no morals because it's ripe for a dictatorship. Matter of fact, God gives a nation the kind of government it deserves. And the less discipline and internal regulation are in people's lives, the more regulation and external control must be without, which means a country can only have a republic or a democracy if the people are basically moral. When they move away from having real rights and wrongs in their life, they become susceptible to either a monarchy or a dictatorship. Edmund Burke said over 300 years ago, society cannot exist unless a controlling power is put somewhere on will and appetite. And the less there is within, the more there must be without. It is ordained in the eternal constitution of things that men of intemperate minds cannot be free. Their passions forge their fetters. So what we have here is when you have a person whose basic religion is a religion and not a relationship, there's this great fear of doing the wrong thing. The one thing we have left in our culture is not cultural consensus. That's weird. A kid is expected to know that it's wrong to sleep with a boyfriend, say, or his girlfriend, when the whole media culture around you sees nothing wrong with that at all. So you get no reinforcement from your culture. Matter of fact, if you haven't done this by the time you're out of primary school, it seems like now, people ask you, what is wrong with you? So a person will feel guilty that they feel guilty. They know they ought not to feel guilty because there's nothing wrong with it, but they still feel bad about it. The real feel guilty comes from the law of God written on the heart. The cultural guilty changes all the time. I used to think of, the Addams Family, the movie, the Addams Family movie. I thought, that is a very weird thing to try and make things that are scary and gross funny. It's really not funny to cut your brother's head off with a guillotine. But you've got to try and make it funny. See that? You take something. But I thought you could bring a child up and teach them that washing your hands was a mortal sin. And when they washed their hands, they'd feel guilty about it. Do you see that? But there comes a time in their lives when the inner teaching conflicts with the outer reality of the universe, and then they tend to throw away everything they've learned from the inside. God's pattern is what you teach on the outside is to match the witness in the heart. So when a person comes of age and they begin to not just have that, what mother told them or something else, but what they've learned matches what they've discovered is real, then the two merge and you get an integrated person. Our problem is we only got one thing left in the culture that stops people from doing stuff. And what is it? It's not guilt. It's not social rejection if you don't conform. It's shame. Shame is a very strong thing in a lot of cultures of the world. Japan, it's much higher than guilt. And in this culture, it's becoming the same. A kid will kill somebody and take his shoes for shame. He hasn't got the right shoes, he can't afford them, so he'll kill somebody because he doesn't want to be shamed. A girl or a guy will sleep with their boyfriend or their girlfriend because they don't want to be ashamed. They don't want other people to go, well, you know, what's wrong with you? See that? Shame has become the dominant motivation of this culture. And this is what I want to say to you. It is the one thing you cannot use. The Christian church ought never to be saying shame on you. It ought to be saying the exact opposite. God will sometimes, if you keep persisting, He will allow shame to fall on your life. But it's the last resort. Do you remember when Jesus met that woman taken in adultery and all these guys were standing, these Pharisaical guys, old and young, were standing around with rocks ready to kill her? It must have taken Pharisees about 3 years to think this one up. There she is. He said, Master, this is a full setup. Master, this woman was taken in adultery in the very act. We were videoing at the time. Where's the guy? Bible doesn't say thou shalt not commit sexual immorality. Girls, you're going to get stoned. You all died. It wasn't just, see that? Where is the guy? He's not even there. The girl is. She's there. She can't run away. You've got all these guys around her. Everybody with their big sharp rocks to kill her, according to the law. And they say, what Moses commands in the law, that such should be stoned. What do you say? Now, this is classic gospel versus legal. Is it true that the law commands such should be stoned? Yes. What does that mean? It means that immorality in any form is extremely dangerous to the preservation of a nation. If you look at the art and the sculpture of early Greece, it's very virile. It's very gladiator type stuff. As you look at the decay of Grecian morals and their free-flowing, free-thinking thing, the artwork changes. They become very effeminate. They become very moralless. And then Rome comes in with its iron fist and crushes Greece. Whenever a culture gets eaten out with immorality, until it finally has no rules at all in that area, it is the end of that civilization. And only spiritual awakening can change it. And if we learn anything from history, we should see what the state of the morals of a nation is just before it goes down the tubes. And God will allow another nation to come in and just take it out or completely destroy it or just simply take over the whole thing. This thing about shame, here is Jesus, and all these guys are standing there. What do you say? And he doesn't say anything. He just stoops down as though he didn't hear them. And he starts writing in the dust. He writes on the ground. And they keep on asking him. He's just writing. Now, I always wondered, what was he writing? What was he writing in the sand? And I used to think it was probably like phone numbers or something, or names of girls that these guys had been with who weren't their wives. See, that looks like, you know, Agatha or what. I didn't know what he was writing in there. But I thought for years it was some kind of thing that these guys, obviously they were convicted by whatever it was that he wrote. The Bible says, being convicted by their consciences, they went out one by one, beginning at the youngest and through to the eldest. So, what did he write? I used to think it was names. I don't think it is now. Because God didn't write your name for everybody to see last time you screwed up, did he? He hasn't changed. He protects you from shame as much as he can. If you continue to go on doing the thing you've done that is wrong, there will come a day he'll take his hand of protection off you and you will be ashamed. But the Christian church cannot afford to lay shame on kids. They've got too much already. And remember this, when Jesus died, he didn't just die a cruel death. He died naked, stripped bare, people mocking him, ridiculing him. See that? He didn't just take sin. He took shame. And we're not going to put shame on kids. I'm not going to put shame on kids. The best and greatest thing you can do for young people is love them, whatever their shame is. And all of us, I bet if God got a movie of our lives and projected it up, just like I've got this thing here, none of us would like to be there. Everybody else would like to watch somebody else's, but not theirs. And one of the great judgments in the Bible is when you're shamed before people. People think that being stripped naked is kind of a cool thing. It really isn't. Not in a concentration camp. There is no sexual interest when people are just stacked up like cords of wood to be stuck in a gas chamber or burned. See that? The stripping of a person publicly is a total shaming act, with a woman cutting off her hair. So this is a terrible judgment, and one that Christians must avoid. You never say to a person, shame on you. But you know, a lot of Christian stuff is done using shame as a motivation. People will go, you know, we were up this morning at 4 praying. I don't know what happened. Where were you? It's sort of like, shame on you. That thing, we shouldn't do that stuff. That's not Christian at all. Leave that thing to God. Leave it in His hands. So, I love the way that story ends. One by one, the rocks drop, not on the girl, on the ground. What was Jesus writing on the ground? You know what I think it was? I think He wrote on the ground what He wrote on the rock with a finger of fire to Moses. They would just tell him about Moses. Moses commanded, such should be stoned. What do you say? And He wrote on the ground, on the sand, what He wrote on the rock when He gave it to Moses. I am the Lord your God. You shall have no other gods before me. That was a death penalty too. See that? The soul that sins, it shall die. One by one, as He wrote the law, they looked at it and said, shoot, well, okay. Remember the thing? He that is without sin among you, let him first cast the stone at her. So they're already, I haven't slept with anybody recently, so I'm good. And they look, and thou shalt not covet. Thou shalt not bear false witness. Honor your father and your mother. Boom, 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 boom. Till big pile of rocks. Nobody there except Jesus, who could have picked up all of the rocks and killed her. The only one who could. And then God plays dumb. It's like He's there and He looks up. It's like looking, woman, where are your accusers? Has nobody condemned you? No man, Lord, neither do I condemn you. Go and sin no more. He didn't pretend that what you did was not wrong. But mercy rejoices against justice. God loves forgiveness. He loves doing it. He tells His kids to be like that. See that? It is not that He doesn't care about sin. It's just that He cares about the person even more. And God has to take the rap and the cross, particularly, to show you that there is a real consequence to wrong, and you're not going to avoid it. Somebody is going to hurt because of sin. So what He does is He steps in and takes the penalty for you. So you know He's not light on the wrong, but He loves the person who did it. Much like the old story of the judge who heard about this mass killer, and they finally had caught the guy, and they brought him up. And as the judge was going through, he looked up and he got a terrible fright because he saw his own son who'd changed his name and looked totally different, but he was this guy. And so the jury returned an obvious guilty verdict, and then it was up to the judge to pass the sentence. The judge said, because of these crimes, this man deserves death. And then he took his robes off and he went down and he took his son's place. That's what Jesus does. So, more or less strict in religion, according to what he knows to be right, more or less miserable to the degree his conscience bothers him. They do what they have to, not really what they want to, driven by warnings. Basic motivation of fear, not love. Not only afraid of hell, but punishment, judgment, and disgrace. Still lives for himself, thinks of himself, seeks his own happiness and safety supremely. These fears keep him outwardly moral, kind of obedience, formal, heartless, loveless, and completely worthless. His only happiness is what is coming. Their anticipatory joys, not actual lived-out experiences. More afraid of punishment than sin. Doesn't really hate sin, just hates being punished. It's a Bart Simpson thing. I didn't do it. Nobody saw me, and you can't prove it. No, you don't dislike the wrong. He doesn't ask, if I do this, what'll happen. This is what the Christians think is. Remember when Joseph, his brothers betray him, and he's thrown in this pit, and then he gets taken into Potiphar's house, and makes it worse as Potiphar has a wife who's been reading The Sensuous Egyptian and wants to try out chapter 5 on her servants. Every time that Joseph comes, he's got to almost bring bodyguards with him because she's hanging on a chandelier waiting to drop on him. And so finally, he makes a mistake. He comes into the house one time when he hasn't got people around him, and she grabs him, see? And he doesn't go, well, perhaps I could love her in the Lord. And there's only one way he can get away, and he runs. He just she rips his clothes off. He becomes a streaker for righteousness. He gets out of it. What he says is, how can I do this wicked thing and sin against God? Not, what if Potiphar finds out, or what? See that? Got nothing to do with that. How can I do this wicked thing and sin against God? When David sinned with Bathsheba, which made him not only an adulterer but eventually a murderer, when he prays his broken confession afterwards, he says to God, against thee only have I sinned. He's not saying he didn't hurt Bathsheba, didn't kill her husband, that he did all of those things, but he realized the first responsibility I have is this way, not that way. That is why I think we have so many people preaching sermons on assurance of salvation. Do you know? You go to many, many churches, the vast majority of the sermons are about the security of the believer. I have a friend who wrote a book, I'm eternally secure, I'm eternally secure, I'm eternally secure. I hope I am. I analyzed the results of a major crusade one time because I had access to all the data cards. See? And so I graphed them. I actually made a graph, divided them up onto how they said they'd responded. These are general invitations where people come up to get right with God. And what struck me is a huge percentage of them were for assurance of salvation. People came forward because they didn't feel saved, and they wanted some kind of assurance that they really were. And I thought, I think a lot of reasons why people don't feel saved is because they're not saved. But because everybody's told them they are. See that? You've prayed the prayer, do you believe in Jesus? You see that? Well, yeah. Okay, you're fine. You got your ticket. Go do whatever you like. It may sound like exaggeration, but I think that's the religion of millions of people. You see how radical this message is? This is not just, we had a little thing, we share with a few people, how'd you like, go to heaven and sign on this dotted line and stuff. It is radical. It is as different as darkness is from light. It is you know what it is like, I'll put it like this, do you know what it is like to hang out with 2,000 kids who are totally clean? Who love God with all their hearts. It is the scariest experience in the world. You put an unsaved person in the middle, they get saved in about 10 minutes. It is the scariest thing in the world. They're real, they're utterly real. See? Full of joy for God. It is a scary, scary thing. I've been there. I've watched it. It's a marvelous thing. God's love is the greatest force in the universe. It is so utterly amazing. And it's a simple, it's not a complicated thing. People love sermons on the mercy of God and the grace of God and how kind He will be. And here's a song. Used to sing. He'll always say, I forgive. That's part truth. There comes a day when he doesn't say that. You stand in his presence. You're not going to say, okay, that's fine, you know. Did you believe in me? Okay, you and the devil, that's fine. Move on. So, this is another key one. A spirit of get instead of give. Harry Conn said this. He said he never met a mean Christian. A real Christian isn't mean. They're not thinking about how they can, you know, what they can get out of stuff. They're always thinking, how can I help that person? Sometimes they don't have enough to do it. You can't do everything. Remember, you're not God. You can't love all the people you'd like to. You can't help all the people. You walk through India with a couple of rupees in your pocket, you're not going to be able to meet that need. If you are need-driven, you will die. I remember when one of my friends first went to, I think it was Vietnam, and the Khmer Rouge had been through, and he found himself in charge of 5,000 refugees with absolutely nothing. They had no home, no clothes, no food, no place to go, no jobs, nothing. And they had to, not only did they have no home, they had to keep moving camps because the Khmer Rouge would come and kill everybody. So he found himself, as a YWAM guy and his wife, in charge of 5,000 people with absolutely nothing. And he said, if my ministry had been based on meeting need, I would die. There's nothing you can do. And you're not supposed to have a ministry based on need. Not yours or other people's. We're not doing things for what we can get or what will happen to us if we don't. It has to be done out of love and out of trust. And all of these, a person who loves God and trusts Him will be a generous person. They won't, in daily business, you'll see whether people are selfish or not. Just an ordinary day-by-day life. If selfishness, Finney said, rules our conduct there with man, as sure as God rules, we are selfish. If you find people, they're always trying to screw people out of stuff and, you know, how do I get this money? And they're into, I'm not talking about asking for support and so on.